Guy with Andrew Hilton here, and we are well into October now. We finished up our little trip to Calgary there, and that was a fantastic trip.
Annex. Oh, there it is.
And I want to take things a little bit back here. You know, we're always talking about, this is the new beer, here's this new brewery, here's this crazy beer style like cold IPA that just comes out of the woodwork. I want to take a step back because Mike reminded me that
there's some really spectacular Bavarian beer styles that we really haven't talked about all that much.
So I wanted to take things back and do an Ayinger tasting. And then when I went to order the Ayinger Hell, it was out of stock because of bloody course it was. Why wouldn't it be? So we're going to do 3 Ayinger beers and 1 Schneider because screw me apparently. From Ayinger, we are going to have their Bräuweisse or their Hefeweizen. It's a classic hazy Bavarian style, one that we don't see very often. We have their Dunkel, which is actually usually an ale in a darker style. This is rich, it's chocolatey, but it's not that super intense, spicy cinnamon pencil eraser things that we really get out of Weizenbocks or Dunkel Weizenbocks. The beer I'm really referencing there is like the Schneider Aventinus. Speaking of Weizenbocks, we have a pale Weizenbock here also from Ayinger. This is going to be stronger, bigger, spicier, richer. This is going to be a very big beer, but it's going to kind of be a bigger version of the Bräuweisse. And then finally, a Bavarian Hell. This one, of course, by Schneider. Really outstanding, easy drinking lager. This came out as the Bavarian answer to Pilsners, and it really shows in the flavor. This is just a spectacular beer tasting. Price is the same as always, $20 all in. All that and more coming up on Wednesday, October the 12th at 6 o'clock. We'll see you out for this one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Bavarian beer tasting, which was supposed to be an Ayinger tasting, and then Ayinger's Jahrhundert Helles Lager sold out, which doesn't really help us. So let's talk some Bavaria. Let's pour a little bit of the George Schneider's Bayerisch Hell into our glasses. And let's talk just a little bit about why Bavaria is so important. Bavarian beer is really, you know, the heartland, the original OG brewing region. They're where so many of our favorite beer styles come from. We talk about, you know, the birth of the North American pale lager after the Second World War, all of that, Budweiser, Kokanee, Canadian, Coors, it's all based off of the Bavarian style Helles and the Czech style Pils that came out of Bavarian know-how. Pilsner Urquell, the first Pilsners, all of the Czech Pilsners, and then the Helles that the Bavarians kind of created because they were tired of the Czechs eating their lunch. All of that comes out of Bavarian know-how and some ideas stolen from the British about how to make malted barley with coked coal. Now, I'm kind of struggling here a tiny bit because I can't actually get the comments or the video on here. Hopefully that's fine. I think that's got it. There we go. So, Bavarian beer, when we talk about Bavarian beer, we're going to start out by talking about the Reinheitsgebot, the 1516 Bavarian purity law that doesn't mention yeast, but does mention hops and barley and water. Now, this was to a point kind of a slap in the face to other styles, like Kolsch has historically always had a little tiny bit of salt. Berliner Weisses tended to have fruit added, especially fruit syrups. There was a very strong tradition of like smoked beers coming out of Bamberg. All of these things were not really in the spirit of the Bavarian purity law, but it got passed for all of the Holy Roman Empire, largely because the Bavarians pushed for it through the unification of Germany, as this will really benefit our brewing industry. If you want us to join your new country, you need to let us screw over all of the other brewing regions in Germany by imposing Bavarian standards on everyone else. Now, the other interesting thing about the 1516 laws, the Reinheitsgebot, is it actually also set maximum prices for everything. So when beer was in season, so when beer was, you know, that you could get barley and yeast would ferment easily into D, they actually set a maximum price per liter, or there was a German equivalent that's like 1.044 liters. I forget what the term is. But they actually set like 1 crown mark as the maximum you could charge. And when beer was in off season, when it was, winter and it was much harder to brew, 2 crown marks per 1.044 liters was the maximum you could charge. There's a ton actually in this Bavarian purity law that's not related to just only water and malt and barley, but curiously not yeast, that actually ends up in there. So we're going to start with George Schneider. Now, Schneider is very interesting. Schneider got its start in 1872. I know you're all seeing on the back of your bottles it says since 1928. That's when they moved to the city of Kelheim after their original home in Munich was absolutely bombed to hell during World War I, and they literally lost everything when their brewery was destroyed. But in 1872, this was during the reign of the King of Bavaria, Ludwig II. You probably know him best for building Neuschwanstein. He was kind of an absentee king. Didn't really care about the country, the economy, the army, the Bavarian people in any way. He really liked Wagner, the composer, and he really liked building these grand architectural projects. So Ludwig II, who was found floating face down in the lake next to his Neuschwanstein castle, probably assassinated. One of the reasons that happened was the brewing of Bavarian beer had always been tied to the nobility. It was a ducal status thing. So, oh, you're just a baron? You're just a count? Well, you're not going to be able to brew beer. That's for dukes or better. But he sold the Weiss brewery in Munich to the Schneider family, who were commoners, and sold it for a horrifying amount of money, but he needed the money to, finance his castle building fetish. So he sells the license to brew beer in Bavaria to a commoner. This is where the George Schneider brewery gets its start in 1872, and away they go. They come up with a Bavarian-style Hell. This is kind of the German version of a Czech Pill, as I said. It's bright, it's clean, it's easy drinking. And this is one of those breweries that's very much a turning point. I mean, when we talk about Bavarian brewing, like history, we start talking about like Weihenstephaner, who claims to be the oldest brewery on earth with a founding date of 1040. There has almost certainly been a brewery on that site, and I would say operating more years per century than they weren't operating since 1040. Continuously operating under the same name, under the same continuous... No, I'm not buying that, not for one bloody second. Weihenstephaner, sure. There has been a brewery there since 1040. Has it been this brewery? Probably not. Just like these guys are claiming 1872 as their founding because they bought a closed brewery, started up from nothing, and like created a whole new peasant class brewery operation, which hadn't existed in Bavaria before. Weihenstephaner has reinvented itself enough times that I don't think we get to claim continuous operation since 1040. Ah, the good old days of 1040. Where were we? We were so young. By which I mean it was about 1,000 years before we were born.
Good old days. Oh, the bad old days.
Okay, so Bavarian Hell. Hell means bright. If you've had a German Pilsner before, if you've had a Czech Pils before, you kind of know where we're going with this. It's very clean, it's very cereal, it's very easy drinking. This is not a beer that you are going to find very complicated or very challenging. I will point out that it is still, now the Bavarian purity law doesn't really mean anything anymore. It got gutted after the Second World War, and it also kind of got gutted after the First World War, so there's not a whole lot left to it. But you're not going to see a whole lot of corn. You're not going to see a whole lot of rice. Schneider still to this day only uses hops from the Hallertau region. So they're using very, very local, noble hops to actually make this beer. Noble hops, by the way, comes from that same nobility being the only people able to brew beer. So here it is. It's a German take on Czech Pils, again, invented by a Bavarian. It's clean, it's bright, it's cereal, it's great, it's a fantastic lager, one of the best we get in the shop. if there's any Helles that's not kind of riffing on this, they're not a very good Helles. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Bavarian beer as you walk into a liquor store. What are you going to find when you get to the German beer case? Well, you're probably going to find some Becks. Fuck Becks, that's just the Budweiser of Germany. You're going to find things like Aventinus by Schneider. You might find some Hefeweißbier Dunkel. You'll find some Helles, maybe like an Altbairisch Dunkel, maybe a Weizenbock. But 90% of what you're going to find, even in my store, is Hefeweizen or Bavarian Weissbier. Weiss in this case does double duties. It means both white and wheat. Hefe means cloudy. Now, this beer, I'm not going to swirl it around because I'm on camera and I'll probably spill it and then it'll be really embarrassing and Aaron will always bring that up. So we're not going to do that. But you should, maybe if you're pouring the whole thing, pour out half the bottle, give it a really good swirl to get the flour off the bottom, and then pour the rest of the beer. I would be doing that, but I'm on camera, so I kind of can't. I'll pour a little bit here, though, and then give it a bit of one of these if I can. Oh, that's foaming up like nobody's business. There we go. That's probably fine. I'll also point out that Schneider here, that's the family name. Ayinger is a place name. It is literally the beer from the city of Aying. And ER in German is really, really interesting. Like the reason I have wine on the table here is this is a Peace Porter. The grape variety behind this is Riesling, but it's a wine from the city of Peaceport. So it's a Peace Porter. It's a name, so being a name selective or place selective name. So this is wine from Peaceport. Ayinger is beer from Aying. Grauburgunder is actually the name of the grape, but it follows the same rule in the same sense that Grauburgunder means gray grape from Burgundy. The ER in this case is referring back to Burgundy, Pinot, Chardonnay. So this is a Pinot Gris or gray Pinot from Burgundy, which is, at least from a German perspective, the home of Pinot. Is it really? I'd probably say Northern Italy, probably, but that's getting off topic. So here we are with the Ayinger Brewery making a Hefeweizen, so a cloudy wheat ale. These are very often made with, well, in North America, they'll be made with things like orange rind. Or when I went to Boston Pizza last night, don't ask, it was hockey season. There's not a lot of places that put the sound on for the game. I had myself a Belgian Moon because I defy you to find something better that they're selling at Boston Pizza. And I had it with a giant chunk of orange floating in the glass. How was it? Barely passable. But you know what? I had 3 of them and it was a good time. This, however, this is going to come by that orange flavor through the yeast strain, through very careful hopping, through very, very clever brewing. And this is very, very classic. So this brewery gets its start in 1878. Hilariously, history in terms of like ownership of this, really spotty. Like Schneider, even their Wikipedia article, Schneider just talks about like, yes, this was started by George Schneider. He was the first like commoner to buy the brewery from an aristocrat. Ayinger's just tied to the Merchant de Vin label. Now, Merchant de Vin these days isn't a name you hear very much, but going back to like the mid-1980s, even into the mid-1990s, everything cool that came to North America for European beers came through Merchant de Vin. So Ayinger, that was like the German name because this was the guy importing it. You want Lambic? Well, it was Lindemann's Lambic because that was who Merchant de Vin had. You want an English beer? Samuel Smith's. It was all under this same umbrella of this one company that made all these beers, to the point that, until the German government sued them, Ayinger was actually brewing their beer at Samuel Smith's in Tadcaster, UK. It's a very, very interesting one. So this is one of those very old, very respected, very prestigious names. We're doing Ayinger for a reason. Their beer is excellent. But they also kind of were brewing their beer in the UK for a while, so we just won't talk about that too much. So here we are. It's clean, it's bright, it's spicy. Here's the orange, here's the white pepper, here's a little tiny bit of clove. And yeah, like, what more do you want from a Hefeweizen? This is without having to float a giant chunk of orange in my really disappointing pint of Blue Moon. This has all of that. It has that clovey, spicy, baked goods yeast note. It has that pretty fresh navel orange characteristic. And this is all within that 15-16 purity law, where it's just barley, hops, water, and, you know, quietly yeast. It's done very, very well. This is not, you know, adding orange extract at the end to make something more appealing to a broad market. I drank the hell out of Rickard's White, but that is not great brewing. This is the same idea, but done with talent rather than artificial flavoring, and I really respect it. This is an excellent Hefeweizen. Of course they want scotch the second that the cameras are on. Yes. Welcome. We're live. If you want to come in, you're going to be on camera.
You're welcome to be.
You're welcome to be. You can come in, shop, but you are going to be live on camera. So when we're talking about this, I do want to talk a little bit about terminology here. So let's talk about German beer labels. So this is a Weizen Doppelbock. So Weizen here meaning wheat, Doppelbock meaning double strong. Now, Bock simply means strong. You'll see that term repeated here on this Weizenbock, or strong wheat beer. The term that's a little bit squishy is alt. Now, alt means old. Now, that just usually means it's made in the old fashion. Now, that's a very, very loose term, which is very surprising for Germany because they don't really do loose terms. But in this case, Sticke alt means secret old recipe. And in this case, they are making an ale out of it, in the sense that before the invention of lagers, all of the beers in Germany were ales. So... Sorry, Aaron. The opportunity was there and I seized it. So, Sticke alt, or secret old recipe, in this case is referring to the fact that this is actually made, in this case in Quebec, using an ale yeast, because before lagers became a thing, the old way was using ale yeast. When we get to the Ayinger Altbairisch Dunkel, in this case, alt refers to the fact that when we think of Bavaria now, we tend to think of Hell, or we tend to think of Hefeweizen, or if you're really nerdy, maybe you think of Weizenbock. You don't really think of like dark beers. So in this case, the old-fashioned part, or the alt part, isn't referring to the fact that you're using ale yeast. It's referring to the fact that before the Second World War, before the super popularization of Pilsners and Helles and that sort of thing, Bavarian beer used to be overwhelmingly this kind of dark chestnut color. In fact, in Michael Jackson, the beer writer, not the pop star, in his book, the 100 Great Beers You Have to Try Before You Die, I think most of his Bavarian selection is all dark beer. And this is actually one of those, I think it was actually 500 beers you try before you die. But still, this is one of his 500 beers, and it's very much in that dark style, because this is what Bavaria used to be known for. But we'll get there. That is indeed some outstanding guerrilla marketing from Truck Center. Well, okay, so Chris, let's talk about the sports bar deficit in this city. I wanted to go out because yesterday, not counting the Nashville San Jose games that were played in Europe and played at like 2 in the afternoon, I wanted to go out with my friends, have a beer, not pay for Sportsnet Premium, and watch a hockey game with the sound on in the city of Lethbridge. Where in this city can you realistically do that reliably, where they'll put the sound on and the game on, and it doesn't look or sound like complete crap, that's not a Boston Pizza anymore? There aren't very many spots. Legends occasionally will have the game on, but they really are picky about putting on sound. All the Pops group, like the Duke and Pops South and Pops North, they don't ever want to put the sound on because that costs extra money. There's not a lot of places that will put the sound on a hockey game, and it's kind of like Boston Pizza or nothing. And
Slice used to do it.
Except the screen was the CRT screen. It was this big. Yeah, exactly. It's like I could have that same experience by watching a game on my laptop from across the room and smearing my glasses with Vaseline. That would be the slice hockey watching experience. But no, like that's why I went to BP's. Is there's nowhere in this damn city that still puts on a hockey game with sound anymore. So here we are going to BP's, I guess. And Tyler, Legends TVs aren't very good. I just want to watch a hockey game and have a beer that isn't Blue Moon with a giant chunk of orange in it. Or the can of Coors Original I had before that smelled strikingly of Struck Match. That wasn't supposed to be a pun, but it kind of ended up being one. It smelled like sulfur, like the whole can. I don't know if that was a packaging thing or if maybe they had an issue like with their beer fridge where like their condenser died or something and it started putting off this sulfur aroma, but like I couldn't finish it because it smelled so much like Struck Match. And I don't mind me a Coors Original. It's passable, I guess. Yeah. It wasn't the greatest beer experience of my life, which is funny because the guys from Cabin were saying, oh yeah, we got super saturation into all the Boston pizzas. No, they haven't. I've been to 3 Boston pizzas in that time. Don't judge me. And none of them have had supersat, and all of them I have tried to have a supersat. So, ooh, does Brewhouse play sound? They probably do, but it's really the opposite end of town for me. And also, that was the saddest donaire that has ever donaired.
Don't get the pierogies.
Don't get the pierogies? I would say don't get the donaire.
Don't get the pierogies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. The brewhouse probably does put on sound. But again, we run into nothing but domestic beer. And I was there to get like my tires changed at the Cal Tire, and it was going to take an hour. So I was like, okay, swapping winter tires this summer, going to take an hour. I'm here. I'm kind of hungry. I'll get some lunch at the brew house. It's just a short walk across the parking lot. And I get in there and I said, okay, well, you know what? I like a donaire. Okay, yes. I went to the brew house and I ordered a donaire. That's my mistake. I'll own that. What I was served, however low you're setting that bar, it was like knee height, folks. Like it was straight to hell. It was terrible. You know what, Chris, I've actually started seeing like supersat a bunch of places. I had a supersat while I was waiting for my takeout from like Luigi's Northside. Luigi's Northside carries super saturation, and it's always pretty fresh. That's great. That's a great thing for like beer drinkers in Lethbridge in general. Slice carries supersat. Owl has supersat, at least in cans. I don't think they have it on draft. Country Club had Cabin Sunshine Rain, which longtime viewers will all know that I prefer as the better IPA from Cabin over supersat. Like, there are great places to get an IPA in town. There's just not one that has a hockey game on with sound. Well, we got real sidetracked there. So let's dive into Weizenbock. As we talked about with our terminology, Weizen meaning wheat, Bock meaning strong. Weizenbocks can be dark like the Schneider Aventinus. This is a Dunkel Weizenbock or Dark Weizenbock. It's a stronger version of a Hefeweizen. Now, what I would usually expect from this beer would be more of that yeast note. I would expect more clove, more white pepper, more nutmeg. I would expect that big spicy note to not just be in the background, but be the first thing I get. Let's see how that goes. I would also expect the like fresh navel orange thing to be a little more in the background and be a little bit more cooked orange marmalade. And that's not because of the barley they're using, that's just because of the higher alcohol. Alcohol on these two is 5.1 for the Bräuweisse and 7.1. So we're a full 2 points higher. That's like the alcohol strength of an old school IPA, like Red Racer. So this is a big beer. Okay, yeah, that rocks. Yeah. Okay, I'm having more of that. That's delicious. That's everything I like in a Bavarian beer distilled down to one beer. There's your like rye bread. There's your if any of you go to the farmer's market and get the Anna's Hungarian baking spelt sourdough, it has that note. It has caraway for days in here. There's an aniseed note. There's so much going on here. It's big and it's spicy and it's rich and it's cheap enough we can do it for a $20 4-pack tasting. Like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I want in a Bavarian beer. Just bigger, louder, richer. Oh, this is lovely. Sky, I know you're working on a yeah. What do you got there, Scott? Are you finally on that?
I am.
Good. Aaron, what do you think?
Good. It's delicious. It's clean. I don't usually go for German.
Can we just do this tasting again next week, Craig? No, we can't. Unfortunately, we have to change it up. But man, I'm really liking this tasting. I think you can tell by the size of my smile, the smile that was completely absent during Pumpkin Week.
Yeah.
My smile's back.
You were a bit
So
grouchy before we started too.
I was a little grouchy.
Not terribly.
Not
but
terribly, but yeah, a little.
enough to notice. This is turned your frown upside down. Let's just say.
Will I be carrying these going forward? Yes. All of the Ayinger beers will definitely be coming into the store full time. But again, the other thing I'll point out is like this is from two different breweries. Weihenstephaner is no slouch. They've been brewing since 1040. I've always actually liked the Hacker Shore Brewery as my favorite of the Bavarians. Like, there's really, other than, okay, Erdinger stuff can be kind of lame sometimes, can be a little watery. Honestly, all of the Bavarian beers are very much on this same tier. They're all very, very good. How do you go wrong with this particular part of the world because they're all brewed to such a high standard? Erdinger is definitely this dumbed down a bit, but it's still not bad. I still think Erdinger's alcohol-free is one of the best alcohol-free beers in the market, if not the best. Do I want to know what gave all of you the giggles earlier?
Yeah, it's fine. We're just in comedy of errors on this end. Oh, Rick.
But no, it's spicy, it's big, it's rich, it's banana-y. Banana is a thing I didn't point out until now, but that's very much there. Banana bread. Yeah, just a delight. And again, a style you don't see all that much. Like, you see styles like this, you see the Dunkels. These Weizenbocks, these pale Weizenbocks, aren't that common. I would say of all the styles that we see, it's probably the least.
I know you can't answer this for me, but what ruined me on, like, Weizen? Like,
bad Hefeweizens from bad breweries.
Bad Hefeweizens.
People pushing Velvet Fog and Grasshopper and all that shit.
Yeah. So, I'm just, like, wondering what my path back is, you know? Like,
you're already on the
are
path,
good.
Aaron.
Yeah, these are quite good, but I'm still like having those, like, you know, some flashbacks here. I don't know if there's any road around that or not. Should I just force it upon myself until it's resurrected or what?
I don't think you should be forcing anything on yourself. I think for me, I don't know. I travel a fair bit. I go around. Like, I was in Kelowna and I tried a bunch of different breweries and this, that, and the other thing. And I always get the sampler platter. I always try what they have. And if they have a wheat beer on and it's summer, I'll give it a shot. Or if I feel like if a brewery has like a Dunkel Weizenbock in a world where everybody needs to have like 3 IPAs and 2 sours and a Bud Light clone, if someone's making a Dunkel Weizenbock, it's because they really care about it. So when I order a sampler, I'll always get something like that because obviously whoever's doing the brewing, they give a damn if they're making it. So I think that's, for me, the route back is start drinking those when, not when you have to have a whole pint of it, when you have just like a sampler tray, you just have a little tiny cup.
Sure.
And it'll kind of get you back there. It'll remind you why you liked it in the first place.
I like this, but banana, you know,
it's a lot of banana, isn't it?
orange, nutmeg, like all of these things, like get old for me real quick. You know, it's like I'm good for one of these things. You know, like this was a good tasting because there was only one of these beers.
Yep.
And, you know.
Well, all right, Aaron, finish that off.
Yep.
Go back to the Hefeweizen. See how much banana and clove you get out of this, because I'll bet you find this fairly clean. And I'll actually recommend this to everyone at home. Let's go back to the Hefeweizen just for a minute. Like I said, the yeast was going to be the star here. It was going to be very, very yeasty. I said that right when we started. Let's go back to the Hefeweizen and see how much has changed in how we perceive this beer. This beer.
You're right.
Now this is very light on its feet. It's very clean.
Yeah.
It's very bright. It's still better than Belgian Moon. But it's still clean and fun and easy. This beer, I think when people see Hefeweizen on a beer menu, I think for a lot of craft breweries, they were aiming to be, look at us, look how cool we are, look how much flavor we can express out of this German style. And every Hefeweizen at every craft brewery in North America tastes a whole lot more like this, which is great. It's a genius beer. It's fantastic. But like Aaron, I don't really want more than I've already had. It's not the one I'm going to be going back to tonight. Where part of the charm of a good Hefeweizen is its simplicity. It's clean and it's light and it's drier and the yeast note is there, but it's not dominant. I think the Bavarian method of less is more, except with Weizenbock, which they don't make very often and doesn't sell that great. I think that was somewhat lost on the North American brewing industry with their IPA focus, where always, always, always more is more. I think we kind of lost a step where every North American Hefeweizen tasted like this, which is great, which is super flavor forward, but kind of missed the point just a tad when they probably should have been drinking more like this. And I think that's a bit of a cultural thing. And I also think that with breweries like Far, whose Hefeweizen is very much more like this, I think we're kind of getting back there. I think they've realized the mistakes of the past. But in a world where everybody's coming up with a new, bigger, higher alcohol IPA every other week, which is still, to a point, the world we live in terms of like the Alberta beer industry, the temptation to make a beer like this, when the market really wants a beer like this, you kind of feel like more is an answer. And in this style, I don't think it is. So that's my very long-winded answer to a very simple question.
Yeah.
Chris, I can't actually answer your question because I haven't been to Germany. I don't know where everything would fit. Because Germany has two beer cultures that I'm aware of. They have the local consumption, which is generally national brands, as well as you go to the local brewery because you go to the local brewery because that's where everybody goes. And then there's also the tourist market. Oktoberfest is still a huge event. People go to Germany, they want to drink the beer. I don't know why I put that in scare quotes, but it kind of is. They want to drink the most authentic tasting German beers. So you see a lot of, and again, I haven't been there, so I don't want to put too much on this, but I do have a pretty good understanding of like global markets. Germany, unfortunately, has been, their beer industry has been Napa Valley'd. Everything used to be, hey, you want to go to the brewery, we'll pour you some samples. No charge, just enjoy our beer. It's a lovely Tuesday afternoon. Now, it's $25, includes a tour. $35 gets you the t-shirt, and it gets you half a pint. Whereas before, you used to just be able to taste the beers, because you're going to the brewery, want to try it out. Germany's beer industry, very much to its detriment, I mean, probably not to the detriment of its profitability, but to the detriment of its culture, has been kind of California wine industry, and that's a very deep shame.
Man, I wish Facebook can block us on the sound effects. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, let's talk about what we have coming up in a week from now. Well, we got through Pumpkin Week. It was a chore. We all suffered. Thank you for suffering with me. It hurt. It hurt my soul. It hurt my stomach. It hurt my tongue. But we got through it. So we're going to go into other fall styles. Better fall styles, like stout. Everybody likes stout. Ryan likes stout. Sky likes things. Aaron likes stout, though. We have people, 3 out of 4 of us have good taste in beer, and we like stout. So we're kind of doing a East versus West thing here. From the East Coast, we're going to do Two Crows and Good Robot. We have the classic Maritime Dry Stout. Now, Dry Stout is its own style. It's an Irish stout. So it should, in theory, include some sour beer blended back in. Knowing Two Crows, I would almost guarantee that's the case. They're doing it the old school way, which, considering that Guinness hasn't made it that way since, like, the 70s or very, very early 80s, I'm fascinated to try like a Canadian-made dry stout with sour beer blended in to make it drier. Now, Good Robot's kind of going the other way. They're going with a Radiohead pun. It's oat cake computer. Aaron's going to have a lot of fun with the promo. But this is apparently supposed to taste like a chocolate-dipped oat cake. Should be big, rich, fat. It's an oatmeal stout. It's got a lot going on. Representing the west coast of the country, or the west side of the country at least, we have an Edmonton brewery that we've never talked about before. This is Omen Brewing. This is a milk stout or cream stout. This is called Spilt Milk. So it's a classic North American style stout, I would assume, with the addition of lactose to make it a little bit sweeter, give it kind of a different body. It changes the beer to an appreciable degree, but I'm very curious to see how this goes. And then from Sparrowhawk Brewing out of Calgary, brewery I hadn't heard of in the slightest, but I wanted to bring in because it's a Calgary brewery I've never talked about. I'm curious. I want to see what they're about. This is their vanilla oatmeal stout. Should be really, really cool. Very different styles here, 4 very different stouts. I assume one of them's going to suck. That's generally how things go, but I'm really curious to try them. We'll see how it goes. So that's next week. Now, let's go with our Ayinger Altbairisch, or alt beer related, or old beer related, or in this case, dark beer, which, I mean, it's already called a Dunkel. I feel like that's kind of... I know this is a lager, so I know the alt beer on this does not mean it's an ale. So it's a dark beer, Dunkel, but done in the old school. Not sure what the new school is for Bavarian darks. They're all very much of this style, but I guess we'll give it a shot. I love the color on this. It's just a half shade lighter than Coca-Cola.
Hold it.
Hold it. Hold it.
Hold it.
Bloody Aaron, man. Next bus trip, Germany. Yes, there's a small Atlantic Ocean in the way, but you know what? Across the pond.
There's a grant for that.
And I'm sure the giant rust holes in that bus would not let any water in at all.
The plane equivalent to the bus we took up to Calgary. No toilet.
Oh, God.
13 seats.
13 seats. Just 2 people fall through the floor of the plane into the ocean on the way over. Yeah.
Ooh, toasty.
Yeah, it's got a real rye bread, pumpernickel bread thing here. Like, there's a real like rye bread, dark bread thing here that I'm really grooving on. Raisin, plum, prune, all of your dried red fruits. Teriyaki jerky, you can kind of see it. Chocolate's fair.
I
I get the
soy-
sweetness,
soya-
the sweet soy. Sure,
soya
absolutely.
Sauce. To that.
Well, this is
Oh, damn.
fascinating.
Ooh.
It's not as spicy as like the Aventinus. It's not as sweet or as boozy as a Doppelbock. If anything, this almost could have gone ahead of this Weizenbock 'cause it's very mild, but it's like coffee. It's gentle. This reminds me of like, I never think of German beers as being very similar to English beers. I think that stout and traditional German dark beers are very different from each other. But if you just told me this was a porter or like a really excellent brown ale, there's nothing here that really steers me into that like German vein. This is just a nice dark beer. This is fascinating. Caramel? Yes. Yes, stewed dark fruit, dried fruit, chocolate, coffee, caramel. Just delicious. This is just an excellent dark beer overall. I really don't have anything else I can call for it. I had this whole talk about alt beer, but I already did it, so I can't really go back and rehash it again. I guess we're on rankings, and wow, that's gonna be difficult. Oh god, ranking these. The Hefeweizen 1. The Hell... No. The Dunkel 2. The Hell 3. And the Weizenbock 4. Not because there's anything wrong with the Weizenbock, but it's just, it's very one beer and done for me. And all of these are beers that I would want more than one of. Except for that one.
This one?
No, the Weizenbock. Megan says, oh wow, 4-3-2-1. You
Whoa.
didn't like the Schneider. All right, fair enough. Craig says, oh wow, Craig and I are very different. He has the Weizenbock first. 3-2-4-1. Oh, Craig, breaking my heart, but all right. 3-2-4-1. 3, 1 or 4, 2. Man, people are being really cold to 2. Not fair to 2, really. I really liked 2. I liked that Hefeweizen. It was so pretty and dry and clean. It was a lovely beer. It's everything I like in a wheat beer, but, you know, simple, clean, fun. All right. Well, Aaron, shall we cap it here?
Whatever. Worked for me.
Works for you. Works
Nice.
for me.
Yep.
I think we will see you all out for Stout next week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We will see you in a week. And until then, I've been Kyle with Andrew Hilton Wine and Spirits. This has been a very expansive German beer tasting. I will also just throw in, it's the last beer I brought that I didn't talk about. Ayinger makes a Doppelbock. It's super famous. It's called Celebrator. It used to come with a ceramic goat around the neck on a string. Then it came with a plastic goat on the neck around a string. Now it doesn't come with a goat at all, which is very sad.
Goats are on the label.
The goats are on the label, but you used to get a free goat. It was great. It's a fantastic Doppelbock, probably the best Doppelbock in the market, with all apologies to Farr, who makes an excellent one. If you are looking to try a Doppelbock, if you want the reference style, this is it. This is the Doppelbock. Do try it. I only get these giant 750ml bottles that cost me like $10, so they're not in the tasting, obviously, but do try one. They're excellent. Anyway, we're going to call it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Bye.